We're going to go ahead and get started. Hey everybody, I'm Cynthia with Gentle of Doula, and I'm here with Lindsay. Lindsay, can you please introduce yourself?
So I'm Lindsay. I live in Texas. I have 4 kiddos, ages 6 to 4 months. So this is my littlest one. He was born in December, and so I'm going to be talking about his birth story today. We had a unassisted home birth with him. He's our first home birth. My twins, I had a scheduled C-section with them, and then my daughter was a VBAC that I had in the hospital, which I was medicated for. I had the epidural, whole 9 yards with her. So this was my first, I guess you would say, natural unmedicated birth at home. So big difference between my other ones.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a few questions that I have here.
Okay.
And you said that you did have a hospital birth prior to your home birth. How was the difference?
So with with my hospital birth, I went through with all my prenatal care and all that good stuff. So there's just one difference starting off. When I was 17 weeks, I quit seeing a medical care provider with my son. So with my daughter in 2016, I went through the whole shebang with going to the clinic and all that good stuff. It's here in Southeast Texas where we're at. It can be hard to, let me lay him down. Let's see. Yeah. It can be hard to find a provider that is okay with a VBAC. I actually had to travel 3 hours away to find a doctor that was okay with that. None of our local hospitals here will even let you attempt. They say that it's against hospital policy. So that was a big difference right there. I had to travel to Houston from where we live to be able to just see someone that was even remotely supportive. We, of course, started getting some pushback for induction around 39 weeks, and I actually switched providers at that point and walked into a different hospital in Houston where I was told that their VBAC rates were super high, which they were, and I had a good experience there. But of course, I had IV pain meds, I had the epidural, I had coach pushing, all that, on my back, legs up, all that type of stuff, which of course wasn't anything that came into play when I had my son at home. So those are just some major differences right there.
Okay. What led you to decide to do a home birth?
So I'd always wanted to have a home birth. It's funny, actually, with my daughter, I hired a midwife and had planned a home birth, but I went for my anatomy scan at 20 weeks. We wanted to see what we were having, and won't let me lay him down. So we hired a midwife when I was pregnant with my daughter, went for our 20-week anatomy scan. And my midwife thought she saw something funny with my placenta. So she wanted me to go to an OB to have it checked out. And we did, and they diagnosed me with what's called circumvallate placenta. I think I'm saying that right. And so basically what it is your placenta, like the edges around your placenta are kind of flipped in a way that they're not supposed to be. And if it's a true case of circumvallate placenta, you're more at risk for like hemorrhage and abruption and things like that. So based off of the ultrasounds that I had and the OBs that I saw, her conclusion, my midwife dropped me from her care. She risked me out. So at that point, I had to start seeing an OB in the sit down. And so I've always wanted to have a home birth. That's where I was going with that. I've always wanted to have a home birth. Even with my twins at 18, I was really drawn to more of like the natural birth. But of course, twins in our area, it was basically an automatic C-section with them. So I'd kind of been chasing the whole natural birth thing, home birth thing for ever since my first pregnancy. And so when we got pregnant with this baby, I already knew that that's exactly what I wanted to do.
And did you go assisted or unassisted with the last one?
So with the last one, I started out seeing some midwives in a hospital. They were certified nurse midwives. You have to get out if you're not going to listen. I'm sorry. I started out seeing certified nurse midwives, mainly because I have had several miscarriages, and so far the only thing that we've found that helps me maintain a pregnancy is progesterone supplements. So I did go in to see the midwives to be able to get my supplements, have my blood drawn, and have that first initial ultrasound to make sure that we had a heartbeat. It just would have eaten me my whole first
Yeah.
trimester if I wouldn't have done that. So for my sound mind, I went and decided to do that. And I saw them up until probably, I don't know, maybe 14 weeks, right into the second trimester.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched over to a home birth midwife, and I had one prenatal with her. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to have an unassisted birth. I had always thought about it. It had always been in my mind. I'm in all the groups on Facebook and have
Mm-hmm.
known a few people who had had an unassisted birth. And always thought it was neat, but I never thought it was anything that I would want to do. But ultimately, after thinking about it, I decided that that would, be the best option for us, because I went through the whole midwife thing of being
Mm-hmm.
risked out and being put on a, kind of on in a little box that, you
Yeah.
have to meet these requirements and do this, and this for you to be able to have a home birth. And I really just kind of wanted to skip all that and to not worry about things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what fears did you have for your home birth?
Um, I didn't have a lot of fear. I'm very trusting of birth. I know that it works, and I trust my body and things like that. There are some different situations that could have came to light that kind of worried me a little bit. My main thing was hemorrhage. I wasn't very educated on hemorrhage. Um, I didn't know how to recognize hemorrhage or anything like that. So that was actually the only thing that I can think of that I would say worried me,
Mm-hmm.
and that I felt to do the most research on.
Yeah. Um, besides the hemorrhage, is there any other fears? And if so, what helped you get over them?
So not really. I think there was a little bit of concern, like, what do I do if baby doesn't come out, crying, or what do I do if baby takes a minute to breathe, different things like that. But other than hemorrhage, not much. What helped me to kind of get past those things is to just research. I basically researched and asked a lot of questions. I even spoke to the midwife that I was using, let her know, that I wanted to have an unassisted birth. And I talked to her a little bit about hemorrhage and how to recognize it and how to assess if you actually are hemorrhaging rather than just normal blood loss.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about listening to your body and your feelings rather than watching the blood or measuring out blood or anything like that. Whether or not you're feeling weak, or whether or not you're shaky, or you have pale skin, different things like that. With hemorrhage, basically, it made me feel better to know that rather than watching blood loss or, eyeballing blood loss, that I could pay attention to my body and how I was feeling, and that was a more accurate assessment of hemorrhage. So, and then also knowing different things that you could do if you were to hemorrhage, different things that I could do during my pregnancy to keep that from happening, such as, nutrition, and making sure my hemoglobin count was at good numbers. Um, if it were to happen, what I could do, there's some tinctures that I had on hand, such as I had Angelica and Shepherd's Purse on hand, which made me to feel better. And then also knowing that I could utilize the placenta and cord if I needed to help stop hemorrhage, as well as nursing and things like that. So after I did some research and I had all that information in hand, I felt a lot better. I didn't really feel like I was a high risk candidate for hemorrhage, but I knew that if it did happen, I had some sort of idea about what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And what helped you through your labor pains? Like, what pain management did you use during labor?
So I had a doula who was wonderful. She came in and she did counter pressure, which saved the day. It was amazing. I had never had counter pressure before. And she got here about an hour before baby came. And just within that hour of her applying that counter pressure, I felt like I could actually breathe. Like I felt like I could actually focus more through the contractions because it was just such a relief.
Yeah.
I had the birth pool too, which the water really helped during labor. I didn't give birth in the pool, but the water and the counter pressure really helped. I have back labor. I had back labor with my daughter, and I had back labor with my last birth, and the counter pressure just saved the day.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of different techniques that you can use during labor.
Yes.
Um, what kind of support helped you through your home birth?
So, my family, my extended family, like let's say like my dad and my mom and everybody, they knew I was planning a home birth, but I didn't tell anyone that I quit seeing my midwife.
Yeah.
I knew that it would cause concern. I knew that it maybe could cause not so much an argument, but more of a discussion that I didn't feel like I needed to have with anyone other than my husband. And so when I decided to stop seeing my midwife, I didn't tell anyone other than my husband because I didn't feel like that was a conversation that needed to be had and that I knew that it would kind of cloud my judgment. So my family, I think every family has their worries, and I don't think it comes from a malicious place. I think that they just, people worry. And most people aren't educated on physiological birth and how things work. And a lot of people don't trust birth the way that, other people do, like myself. So, other than that, my husband was a little iffy at first. He was a little like, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with that. But we basically sat down and had a really stern discussion that, hey, this is what I'm feeling called to do. This is what I want to do. I want your support, of course. But just know that ultimately this is my decision. And if this is something that I'm going to do, it's going to happen whether you're here or not. I know that sounds harsh to some people, and some people may not agree. But I knew that this was my last baby, and I knew the type of birth that I wanted, and I knew that I wasn't ready to compromise anything that I was planning to coddle someone else's fears. So once we had that discussion, and my husband did do a little bit of research on his own, he came to the conclusion that he trusted me, and he would be on board with whatever I wanted to do. So we had a little bit of a hiccup, but we got past it.
Yeah. What were his major fears?
His hemorrhage. He
The hemorrhage.
he was so caught up on bleeding. He was so caught up on the bleeding. And so I sent him information and talked to him about it. And I think that made him feel better, just in the same way that it made me feel better.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of partners, their main fear are hemorrhaging, but there are ways to help with that.
Yes. So many people are scared of hemorrhage. And once you actually start digging down into it and you see first of all, the different type of ways that you can go through your pregnancy and support your body to not hemorrhage in the first place. And then also the different options that there are to handle it. And how to recognize it, I feel like more women wouldn't be so worried about that in particular if they were more educated on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Looking back, was there anything that you regretted or would have liked to change of your home birth?
So there is one thing, and it may sound silly to some people. I really wish that I would have not cut the cord as soon as I did. Not to say that we just snipped it right off. We
Yeah.
left it attached for about an hour and a half until it was white and not pulsing. And obviously, baby had got all of his blood. But
Hmm.
I really, really wanted to do a lotus birth, and I didn't. I had some pretty bad, pretty intense after pains, just, the normal cramping that you have after birth. And his cord was short and it was hard to hold him. And with all of the cramping and pain that I was experiencing, we went ahead and cut the cord so my husband could hold the baby. Which at the time it felt like the right thing to do. And
Yeah.
it did feel more comfortable, but I do wish that I would have tried a little bit something more to keep his cord intact with his placenta, so I could have went through with the lotus birth.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what tips do you have for moms who plan to have a home birth, who are already like in the process and planning it?
Um, Honestly, I would just say to not compromise with anyone. Um, and I know that some people don't agree with that. And I know that, especially if there's a partner involved, I know that some people definitely don't agree with that. But ultimately, it's you that's giving birth. It's you that has this baby coming out of you. It's you that's going to feel all the sensations and the aftermath, and it's you that's going to have to deal with your mindset and how you're feeling after birth. And I would just say to women, don't compromise. If this is something that you want to do, or if there's something in particular that you want to do when it comes to labor and birth, if there's a certain place that you want to be, to do it, because it's not anyone else's decision but yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have any tips for parents who are still on the fence between a home birth or a hospital birth?
I do. I would just say to what I did, what helped me is I made a list of, and like I said, I didn't have a whole lot that worried me too much because I'm just normally I'm not a big worrier. But just to take and make a list of why you're on the fence, what's worrying you, um, what are some things that would help relieve those worries, what are some resources that you can gather. Do you feel like you want a midwife there? Do you feel like you don't want a midwife there? Just really just go through your options and figure out what's holding you back and start from there. You don't have to dive all into it. You have 9 to 10 months to plan it out and to get prepared. I would just say if you're on the fence, to take it slow and to not throw it out the window right off the bat, because I've seen women and I've known women that have done that and they regret it. So you don't have to make any decisions, fast. You can take your time and you can research and you can educate yourself. And I would really encourage women, whether or not they're going to have a home birth or if they're just planning to have a home birth, um, hire a doula. That is literally the best thing I did. My doula was such an asset. Of course, I had my husband and I love him and he's so supportive and I couldn't have got through it without him, but he wasn't able to come from a place of knowledge in birth specifically, and having my doula there and reassuring me and helping me with comfort measures and showing me different options really just hit the nail on the head. She was wonderful, and she made such a difference.
And the doula also helped your husband, right?
She did. So she was very supportive during the stage where, okay, so one example is when baby was coming out. So I experienced the fetal ejection reflex. I had a big contraction, baby's head came out. And then my body rested like so many other women's bodies do. And my husband, I think, had a little bit of a freak out moment, like, okay, you need to push, you need to get him out now, his head is out, and she was right there beside my husband, reassuring him it's okay. She can push with her contractions. Look at baby, he's doing great, your wife's doing great, everything's okay. And I think that made such a huge difference.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you had doula there to help you and your husband through that. Um,
Yeah.
and because right now there's the whole COVID-19 happening, and a lot of women are wanting to do a home birth last minute. What tips do
Mhm.
you have for them?
So, of course, I fully support a woman staying home. I completely, like I said, with a midwife, without a midwife. I would really encourage those women um, to not make a rash decision just out of fear, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Of course, fear is a valid place to come from. Anyone's feelings is a valid, place to come from. Um, but I wouldn't go into something blindly, and I also wouldn't go into a home birth or an unassisted birth thinking that you can place responsibility on another party, such as your partner, your doula, your midwife. You really have to be able to accept the responsibility and the outcomes of what can happen during a birth, anywhere. Obviously, it doesn't even have to be at
Yeah.
home, it can be at the hospital. It just, I see so many women wanting to have an unassisted birth with this COVID-19 thing going on because they're scared. And birth is such an emotional thing. It's not only physical, it's emotional. And if you go into your birth and you're scared and you're worried and you're thinking, you have all these things in your head that are scaring you, it can really affect the process of birth. And I would just encourage women to clear that out before they go into something like this, because it can be detrimental to the birth process. And I wouldn't want anyone to experience something like that. Just really clear your fears and come to terms and trust yourself and trust your body and surround yourself with love and support and know that you can do it. And just really do the work within yourself that it takes to be able to accept that responsibility.
Yeah. And just final words for mothers who are expecting, any encouragement or telling how your birth went or how you felt your birth went.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, I'm just a big believer that women have the power to make their own choices, that we have the power to do what we feel is best. And so, all obviously, always my thing is just I encourage women to research their options and to make those decisions that feel best for them, and to know that they don't have to take anyone else's consideration into mind. Um, they don't have to take anyone else's opinions when it comes to their decision making. Um, I am so glad that I did that, because if I would have said, okay, I'm all right, husband, because you don't feel comfortable, I won't stay home, or I'll keep my midwife, or I'll go to the hospital, I would have regretted that so much. I would, honestly, I would probably be so upset with myself that I let someone else's influence take over my birth.
Yeah.
I feel so good about myself that I was able to say, no, this is what I want, this is how I feel, and this is how it's going to happen. You support me, or you stay out of my space. And I know some people think that sounds harsh, and I think I've said that 3 times, but sometimes you have to be. Some people just don't understand how sacred birth can be and how it can really shape a woman into motherhood, and how important it is, and how just how important it is to make those own decisions and really come into your power.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Lindsay, I thank you so much for your story and all of your words of encouragement for all the mothers around the world. And we hope that we are able to help mothers in
Yes.
this emotional, and I know it's a scary time, but it's not sorry, I lost the word.
Okay.
It's not unusual to have a home birth. It's actually very normal. So I
Yes.
just wanted to make these videos to encourage moms.